Thank you everybody for coming today. Today I'm happy to introduce you to Andréia Coutinho Louback, who's a Brazilian journalist who's currently here on a Fulbright Fellowship. Andréia Coutinho Louback is a journalist from PUC-Rio with a master's in ethnic racial relations from CEFET from Rio de Janeiro. And she's a specialist in climate justice in Brazil. She's currently a fellow of the Fulbright Humphrey Fellowship at UC Davis. Andréia has worked as a communications coordinator at the Instituto Clima y Sociedade and the Instituto Alana Climatic and Socio-environmental Justice Project. She then coordinated a study on climate justice, gender, and inequalities, which is forthcoming by the Climate Observatory. And she's also actively participated in the translation of the book, Climate Justice, Hope, Resilience, and the Fight for a Sustainable Future by Mary Robinson. And that book is to be released in Brazil. She's currently doing a professional residency as a climate justice specialist at the United Nations Population Fund as part of her fellowship. Among its main themes of action and passion, Andréia works with climate and socio-environmental justice, inclusive urbanization, and racial inequalities. And I think that Andréia is a really wonderful contact for those of you who are in the sustainability studies major in particular. And I'm so excited to have her here. So thank you so much for coming, Andréia.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for inviting me. And thank you also all of you for being here today. Welcome back to the spring break. And so thank you for this moment that we are going to share together. So after the introduction, I just wanna say that my talk has this title, Who Needs Climate Justice in Brazil? Because I'm always trying to answer this question in everything I work, in everything I read, in everything I write as a journalist. I'm trying to answer these questions. Who needs climate justice in Brazil? And today I just want to try to answer these questions to present some ways and some problems and also some solutions that I see and I pursue in these fields in Brazil, and also to share what I'm learning and what I am still questioning and what I'm trying to figure out as a journalist in the West. So first of all, again, I just want to say what I'm doing here, doing my fellowship. I'm participating of the Humphrey Fellowship. That's a Fulbright program. It's a program focused on mid-career professional experience. So lots of professionals from different backgrounds, they come from different countries to work in Brazil, to work in the West, and different host universities. I'm placed in at UC Davis since last August, and over there I pursue academic enrichment and also professional experience like this one as a climate justice specialist at UNFPA. My role there is like, how can I bring the climate justice perspective for the United Nations sector, focus on Afro-descendant people? So how can I raise awareness about gender, race, class, and other intersectionalities in climate change agenda? So it's a wonderful program. I'm so happy to be here. It's a one-year program with lots of connections, lots of different expectations and opportunities. And during my Humphrey year, I had the pleasure to meet Crystal, and I'm so happy to be here sharing what I'm doing in the West. And a question that I always asking, and I'm always wondering, even when I talking somewhere or even when I write some article, is like, what unifies us, like what we have in common? So because I don't know the students here very well, I don't know what's your professional dreams, your professional goals right now, but there is a thing, there is an answer to me that shows what unifies us, no matter our fields and nationalities and what we are choosing for the future. And one of the possible answers is like climate change and social justice, because climate change, it's matter for all of us, in terms of the future, in terms of the present. We have lots of bad news this week. Yesterday, we have IPCC report with bad news about mitigation. And so this is one of the things we have in common to fight against climate change. And also the social justice, because no matter our fields, we are all fighting for a greater good in the future, in a near future. So this question, I like to begin with it, because shows us where we are and where we can go, and no matter what's the field or what's the pathway we are pursuing together. And today, what I'm going to cover in my talk is like the connection between justice and climate change, how I'm seeing this in Brazil, and how far we still need to go to make the justice a reality for all of the marginalized population, and also show some recent climate disaster we had in Rio de Janeiro, where I'm from, and to discuss a little bit about Black Amazon, how is the Black Amazon population, and also why there is no climate justice without racial justice. And to begin with, I just want to share this picture that it's a very good metaphor how climate justice is not a reality in climate change spaces. This is a picture of the Paris Agreement 7 years ago, that you can see that there is no representation in terms of gender. You can see here mostly white men deciding our futures. And in terms of database, the UNFCC, they share with us that there was 12,000 men and just 5.9 thousand women. And you can see at first how the decision making is unbalanced. So leaders, and at this point, we had the Dilma as a president some years ago, and so in Brazil. And so I'm seeing here a very good representation how this space exclude other populations. Because here you can see, like in the majority men, some women, you can see maybe an indigenous leader here, but it's a very good metaphor that shows how the climate justice is not a reality. But so what I'm saying, what climate justice really means for my home country reality and for here, we can see in maybe 3 dimensions. First, as a concept, second, as a movement, and third, as an action. So climate change as a movement, you can see lots of young people, Black population, indigenous population, and other marginalized groups fight for climate change at their territories, at their realities. What means that they are fighting for improvements, they are fighting for less deaths due to the climate change, and also for more representations in terms of climate policies. So climate change is a movement. You can see all the people that are fighting to put social justice in the center of all decisions and all actions. And when we see as a concept, usually we are very focused on how climate change affects in a disproportional way different groups, different places, and different races, different genders. And so to understand this as a concept or as a movement or as an action, we need to talk about intersectionality. I love this image. I know that there are lots of information here, and I don't want that you read each one of this, but it's a very good tool to understand how the oppressions work together, how and why we cannot just find one vulnerability as the final aspect of any analysis. What I mean here is like how all the oppressions we have in the society, they work together. They work together in climate change, they work together in racial injustice, and they work together in when we are looking for a job in a place. So how all the oppressions can limit our opportunities and also can increase all the inequalities we have. So here you can see the racism, you can see factors of age, religion, sexual identity, and all these factors together, like English as a second language, how some oppressions can show the privilege or can show just the oppressions. And I like to show this because it moves me to and it challenged me all to think that there is no just one answer, there is no just one solution, there is no just one pathway to achieve equality. We need all these factors together. We need all these lenses together to think about climate change right now. That's what I'm sharing with you and what I'm learning and pursuing. But also how sometimes we are very focused in just one oppressions or just one problem and forgetting all of other problems and oppressions we have behind the problems. So it's like a very big and ambitious pathway, but intersectionality for me is the key. How can we advance in terms of justice in climate change? Because when I'm saying about climate justice, I'm just putting the table all the injustice that we are experiencing in the climate change disasters, in the climate change problems and also solutions. And to begin with, I just want to share very recent climate disaster that happened in my city this year. In February, I don't know if you heard about in the news or if you read something about it, but we had in Petropolis, that it's a city based in the mountains in Rio de Janeiro. It's a very wealthy city, and over there you could find a very terrible climate disaster that displaced lots of family and killed lots of kids, women, families in different ages, in different generations. But there is one factor in common of this death. They were in the majority Black and in majority poor in Petropolis in Rio. It's not the first time that's happened. 10 years ago, we had also a very big disaster in Petropolis as well. So our representatives from the government, they already were aware about this, and nothing was made to improve. Nothing was made to adapt the city to be resistant and resilient to this climate disaster. And the areas, the places, the neighborhood that were most impacted was the neighborhoods that was poor, that was Black, that was more vulnerable. And so how many intersectionalities there is in these pictures that I'm showing right now? This is a question I ask. And then Angra dos Reis, that is it's a littoral area, a beach area, very far from where I live right now in Rio. A few days ago, they had again a climate disaster that killed about 10 people so far, but displaced lots of families. And this is one here there are some images that reveals some places that were most impacted. This is a very famous beach that I have been there, and it's very destroyed now by the climate disaster and by the landslide. And so Rio de Janeiro, where I live right now, also suffered with flood a few days ago, 4 days ago. And I just chose this picture. It's not a great picture, I know that, because this is a place that I already went. And so this is a poor place. This is a poor place. And people that experience this type of climate disaster, they are poor, they are Black, they are low income. So what all these pictures have in common, and what all these disasters have in common year by year, is like how we are neglecting all the intersectionalities when we talk about climate justice and climate change. Because if climate disaster is happening year by year, and it's killing the same type of group and people, something is wrong, something is not consistently. There is injustice that just repeat and justice and just like appears in one group, in some special groups, special and excluded and marginalized group. And to end this section about how climate change impacts most Black and poor and women, I just want to share with you, if you are not aware so far, that in Brazil, 54% of the population in Brazil is Black. It's like more than half of the whole population, and you cannot see them well represented in decision-making space. You cannot see Black people well represented in climate spaces. And so there is like a majority Black in Brazil that they are not, you cannot find easily in strategic space to change and to fight for public policies. This pictures was taken in COP26, that's a climate conference last year in Scotland that I had the pleasure to be there. And I chose that to put here because it was taken during the march, the climate march we did. And there is a very strong message here that says, climate justice without racial justice is the new colonialism. It's very strong, and the message here is about we are living the consequence of the slavery of years and years of colonialism, extraction, and slavery, and climate justice without racial justice just to represent and reinforce what we lived in the past. Brazil is a country that was founded on the slavery, and what means that we lived almost 4 centuries of slavery, and we are still living the consequence of our past. And climate change is just one more way that this manifests, that this represents what we suffer in the past. And so finally, I want to connect all of things that I said before with the Amazon region reality that I know that you are studying more and reading more and discussing more in the previous class. So the Amazon region, it's one of the treasures we have in Brazil, and also that gets the international attention, the international resources for the Amazon region. And so all the stereotypes and the imaginary that we have of the Amazon region is like a place for indigenous people, a place with natural resources, a place with lots of beauties. But what are more intersectionalities that we can find in the Amazon region? So what else it's like hidden in terms of climate injustice? And when I try to answer who needs climate justice in the Amazon region in Brazil, I also think about the Black population over there. And so this is like an image that shows better the United States that we have in the Amazon, in the legal Amazon. There is a very interesting project. The name is Urban Legal Amazon, and they are basically producing lots of research and lots of database about urban aspects of the Amazon region, trying to focus on urban problems, urban political challenge at Amazon region. And one of them that they already identify, one of the first of them, it's like how the Black population in Amazon region are surviving, how they are surviving to the climate crisis, what resources they are accessing, what are their strategies that they are trying to put on the table to not just to survive, but to protect their territories, their quilombos, that means Maron communities. So how they are surviving and how they are acting against the climate change. And so this is a very amazing project. The name is like Recognizing Black Amazon, that try to rescue all the traditions, all the stories between pictures, between homes, territories. It's like a very cultural movement to try to keep and to show the world there is a Black Amazon. And so they are also suffering in different dimensions with the climate change. And sometimes the media, they are very unfair trying to report what's happening in the Amazon. what I mean here that sometimes they just focus on the indigenous communities that, yeah, it's a very serious topic because they are suffering also with the climate change, but Amazon region is not a place just for the indigenous communities. There are other marginalized groups that needs also of the attention, resources, and public policies to address in these territories. And I just want to share with you this project. Maybe you can look better later, because unfortunately it's just in Portuguese. But this project, it was a Black woman that she took lots of pictures of different families, of different profiles, of women, kids, and old people. She tried to show different generations and to ask the question: so how is the climate change in your territory, and how are you addressing solutions in terms of traditional knowledge, and also how are you advocating in political spaces for more political addressments for your territory, for your problems, for the floods that are coming, because Amazon region has lots of vulnerability. So how are you addressing this? And she chose the way to take pictures and also to interview, and then to make this issue more visible to the Brazil also, and also to the world. And so it's impossible how, as this quote is saying, to think about the Brazilian Amazon without considering the significant presence of the Black folk, many of them young and living in vulnerable living conditions. And in vulnerable living conditions. And when I say vulnerable living conditions, I'm saying about lack of clean water, I'm saying about lack of energy, and also lots of territories that are very exposed to the violence, lots of territories that are not recognized by the federal governments, lots of small and big challenges that violate the basic right of this population, not just in Amazon region, but also in the Southeast where I live. People are deprived of the basic rights they have to live and to survive between a very national and global climate crisis we are experiencing. Almost arriving in the end of what I want to share with you today. I'm not aware how many of you know about this case and why I'm showing this picture. It's my second and last metaphor about how climate change excludes many realities in Brazil and outside Brazil. This picture, this first picture, it was a picture taken 2 years ago in a forum, in an economic forum. It was a very important event, international event. And was the picture that the journalist from Associated Press he published. But the original picture is this one with Vanessa Nakate. She's a activist from Uganda. And when she saw the picture, like when she saw this first picture, she asked, oh, what's going on? I was in the picture. Why the photographer cropped me out of this picture? What happened? And she just posted a Twitter on her Twitter. And she said, I was cropped out on a picture with 4 white activists. And when I asked him, when he saw that her Twitter was being very spread in the Twitter, he answered, oh, I'm sorry, it was not a racism, it was not my intention, I just cropped you because I want that the picture could be better without you. There was some distractions behind you, and that's why I cropped you out. So he was brave enough to give this explanation, but me and you, we know what makes a photographer cut just a Black woman of a picture with other activists. The name is the racism, and it's not so different of what happened in other climate space. Black bodies, indigenous bodies, women's bodies are very excluded of this space. They are not made for us. And so how can we still resist in a space that doesn't want to have us, doesn't want our voice, doesn't want to hear our solutions, our problems, and our way to address climate change in Brazil, in Rio, in Amazon region, or whatever other places, in favelas, in rural communities. This is a second metaphor that shows how terrible the racism can be. It's in a picture, in an event, in a climate space or other space. It's just a small representation in terms of lots of other episodes we have in different spaces. And so Vanessa Nakate, after that, maybe 2 years later, she wrote her book, and her starting point is this episode that I already told you about. She basically tells how is her fight as a young activist from Uganda in terms of climate justice, and how her continent is much more than just vulnerable to the climate impacts. So I just want to end showing some thoughts about climate vulnerability and also climate responsibility, because in the words that we live, we know who is more responsible for the climate change in a global way, and also who is more vulnerable. And I'm showing this last map to show how during the years we have ahead, how the global south will suffer much more. And if you can see with me, there is like a high risk in the Amazon region. You can see in the scale and predictions here. So there is a very disproportionate way to think about the future in terms of climate vulnerability and climate responsibility, because the North global countries, they have resources, they have lots of different ways to address the climate crisis. But in the global South, there are lots of gaps and lots of social, racial, and economic challenges that still remains. So how we can contribute to reverse this reality and these predictions we have ahead? Because if this is the reality, and I'm saying this today in April 2022, so what the real ways we have we have had to fight against the racism and climate justice, and also to finance new resources for the global South countries to reverse, to protect, and to be more resilient to the climate injustice that we are all expecting in the years ahead. So we don't have time, sometimes as a journalist and sometimes as a people that likes different ways to communicate better the climate change. I just wondering, so I don't want to mix and move emotions talking about climate change. I want to move actions. I want to raise awareness. I want to think how can we bring no political voices to being heard, and also not just heard, but these voices can influence public policies in the national and supranational level. This is our challenge. And again, no matter our fields and no matter what we are going to pursue, because climate change, it's what unifies us in terms of concern and in terms of perspectives of future. So this is one of some thoughts and some ways that I'm trying to answer these questions. Who needs climate justice in Brazil? And we also can ask who needs climate justice in the West and other countries, other regions, and other geography spaces. So thank you very much. And I look forward to if you have questions, not just about the presentations, but Brazil and myself. Thank you very much.